But you want to be a lady.
I've left everything I ever had.
I know you think I'm not half good enough for you.
A very respectable woman.
Give dinner parties and entertain your husband's friends.
I'm sure Cleopatra never bothered about napkin rings.
I'm not a well-behaved.
But I want you to be absolutely perfect, you see.
Welcome to the Well-Behaved Woman Podcast Musical.
Podcast musical.
Podcast musical.
I think that was our best one yet.
Oh, maybe.
And that's
And
good.
it's our
because
last episode, so that makes sense. Well, last research episode.
Yes, this is the last one until the big debut
Big debut coming up next.
of our musical.
Catch it while it's hot.
It's going to be so hot. We're going to be stars,
good.
baby. Mennonite
Yeah,
stars.
put on some sunscreen because it's so hot.
So bright in here.
Yep. Okay, anyways.
On that note, in this accent,
Today's-
we got thoroughly
yes.
modern Mennonites.
Thoroughly modern Mennonites.
That's what we are here
We're
today.
getting them done.
We're talking about those modern girls.
Because in today's day and age, what even is a Mennonite?
What even is a woman?
What even is a woman? Who knows?
We got questions.
And that's why we asked them.
And we talked to some good people about it.
All right, I think these accents are getting annoying now. Yeah, we have lots of really good interviews for this episode, so we're excited to get into that.
Yeah, we talked to so many amazing people.
Yeah, so
what's our
this,
first?
This is the stage of life where our character will be old or maybe dead. Haven't decided.
Yeah, we were playing with like it's their funeral.
Yeah. Or like maybe she's like in like a Mennonite nursing home or something. I don't know. We haven't decided, but this is old stage. So nowadays, thinking of your grandmas, your omas.
Curly hair,
Yeah.
bacon buns,
Yep.
walkers.
Yep. That's the deal.
The classics.
Yep.
Yep, we're looking at that. But then we're also looking at what is like Mennonite-ness.
Yeah. When you walk down the street
Today.
and you see another woman, is there a way to tell that that's a Mennonite woman, or
Yeah.
is that term maybe outdated?
We are wondering.
Perhaps.
And so we're going to ask these people about it.
Yeah. So first up, we have Susan Fish. Susan is actually our, what do we call her? Our producer?
Our leader.
Our
someone important to this project.
yes,
We're going to go with that.
Our contact person
Our contact person to the
to Canadian Mennonite.
Yeah.
She works for Canadian Mennonite.
So
and
she
she
gave us this
actually,
grant.
she did. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
I'm sure it wasn't her specifically, but she is not actually a Mennonite in heritage.
not culturally a Mennonite.
Well, maybe culturally. She's not heritagely a Mennonite. Anyway,
She doesn't have a Mennonite tattoo.
her last name is Fish. That's not a Mennonite name.
But we're gonna
gonna
ask
find
her
out.
about her experience.
What? How? Yeah.
I grew up about an hour, I grew up in the Toronto area, about an hour east of Waterloo. And as a kid, my family came to the New Hamburg Mennonite Relief Sale. So I grew up with it being about pies and quilts and MCC as well, Mennonite Central Committee. But it was sort of a festival kind of thing to be part of. And also horse and buggy and bonnets, I think, would be the kind of thing that I would have seen as Mennonite. Then when I was in university, one of my roommates gave me the More with Less cookbook. She was not Mennonite either. But she gave me that cookbook. And that, I feel like, was what made me really kind of understand some of the culture and some of the beliefs. And I don't mean theological beliefs, but sort of church beliefs about how Mennonites interact with society. And so I was really drawn to it. And for a while, my husband and I joined a Mennonite Brethren church. And interestingly, when we left that church, and we left it to go somewhere in our neighborhood, so we weren't entirely committed. I don't know, we weren't Mennonite through and through. We were willing to make a change for other kinds of reasons, but we didn't leave it unhappy. But when we left, there was a certain sense of relief that we were back among the English people, is what it felt like. And I didn't know it until we left. When we left, I was like, oh, okay. But then the next thing that happened was when we were in this church, which was non-denominational, there would be so many times that they would be talking about things and I would lean over to my husband and say, we're not in the Mennonite church anymore. So like it was around, I think I would say specifically around pacifism, and sort of just approaches to war and life and everything, but it also simple living and a whole bunch of things like that, that I just was like, okay, we're not Mennonite anymore. So now we're back in the Mennonite church and not the MB church at this point. And yeah, like the cultural thing is a reality that, yeah, it's not my ethnic background, but I look like I could be. That's one of the things that's really interesting, is that people don't know, in a way that if you're Ethiopian or something and you're a person of color, they have a better idea that you are not sort of from a Russian background or a Swiss Mennonite background. So people don't know that I feel sort of like I don't always know the things that everyone knows. Well, and when I started working with Canadian Mennonite Magazine, well, no, not when I started, when I was interviewed and was offered the job, I was like, quietly to my spiritual director, I was like, I don't think I'm Mennonite enough. Like, I don't think I did a good job in my interview because I'm not Mennonite enough. And she said, well, clearly they thought you were, and they're willing to expand the definition of what Mennonite is. And that was really helpful. So sometimes what I feel like is, I stand in for the people who don't look ethnically Mennonite, and I can speak for that and remind people who this is their ethnic background. I can remind them that the church is bigger than that. I have a friend who worked for an organization, and he got that organization's logo tattooed on his arm. And now he doesn't work for the organization anymore. So I don't have any tattoos, don't intend to have any tattoos. But I think of that. I think, like, would I have like Mennonite tattooed on me? Like, I know that's, I don't know, but and I don't think I would. But having left and come back and found a good home here, in a way I do. Do you know what I mean? So I would say it's not. I think there's still questions around, like we see in any church that gets to a second and third generation that is ethnically based, that sometimes, I mean, this happens with other parts of culture too, that that by the third generation, people are kind of acclimatized to being in Canada or being whatever it is. And I think if the Mennonite church is able to do that work of expanding and going beyond those kinds of roots that are, that are ethnically based, then I think I can see myself staying. But I also see that there's a risk that it gets assimilated, like a risk that it gets assimilated into Canada in a way that like is good, but takes away the distinctiveness. In some circles, there is a sense of I guess that you're welcome to come and be like us. The other story that happened was our church celebrated its 100th anniversary, and there were different. Our particular congregation did, and there were a number of activities, but one of them was a meal and they described it as, we will serve foods our people love. And I'm like, I bet it's not pasta. Like, I bet it's pasca, not pasta. Like I thought, like, our people, like it's things like that can exclude, I think. But on the other hand, I get, like, if you came here, as many of the people in my congregation did, their parents came as refugees. And so the idea of creating kind of a little safe mini homeland is really appealing. But that only, as I said, that only lasts so far and so long. And so, yeah, I think having curiosity and making a bigger table are the things that are the challenges today.
A lot of our research, like as we've been reading a lot of your columns, the life in the 90s, life in the 80s, those ones. And we even got, I think, one or two of our interviews out of reading those and going, oh, that's a good person to interview.
That's cool.
It's kind of like, what has your experience been talking to these, like, born and raised and immigrated here Mennonite thick and thin women, and have you found any kind of like themes that are arising out of that?
I think a lot of Mennonite women have hyphenated their names from or not hyphenated, but like having a double-barreled last name, sometimes hyphenated, sometimes not, from pretty far back. And that's something I saw in Living More with Less as well. Like I would see those kinds of things, and I think I actually think there's like the domestic. I really value sort of domestic life. I love to cook. I love to make a home and those kinds of things. And I think that is a really important value for a lot of Mennonite women. But I also think it feels to me like there's, I don't know, a good, strong, like it's not feminist, it is feminism, but it's not, like I think there's a strong role for women that in leadership, in serving, in missions, in a whole bunch of different things that doesn't contradict the domestic. But I feel like it surprises me when I hear like that it isn't that long since the Mennonite Church ordained women, because my sense is that, yeah, there's less sort of gender restrictions than there might be in other places. I think one of the things that I take away, it makes me think of the Humans of New York Facebook or wherever he posts this now, but you see people around you. And I think it's easy to see older people and as little old ladies or nice old men or something like that. And some people have wild stories. And so it's not even, it's not even a particular story, I think. It's just recognizing that everyone has an inner life. People continue to live and grow and be challenged until like for their whole lifespan. And so I really like that about people in their 80s and 90s, talking with them about their lives. And I think that people who are older particularly have interesting stories about loss and how they've come to terms with aging. So I appreciate that. And I just talked to someone last week who said one of the things she's working through is like, has her life amounted to anything, or has she wasted it? And she's like, I've been busy, I've done things and stuff, but and so there is, I think, recognizing that there's hope and angst and all those kinds of things. That's what I really enjoy about talking with them.
This next interview is with someone who's really special. She's a little girl from my church. She's 6 years old. Her name's Elisa. And she is growing up as a Mennonite now in this church. And we wanted to see, like, what does the future of being a Mennonite woman maybe look like based on the responses of this 6-year-old. So you're going to hear a lot of silence because she thinks a lot. And then I repeat answers. So here we go.
So, Elisa, I wanted to ask you, what is it about our church that you like so much?
I don't know what I like about it.
But why are you usually very happy when you know that it's Sunday?
Because I like going to church.
Mm-hmm. But exactly you don't know why.
I don't know why I like going to church.
Do you like the people from the church?
Yeah, I like the people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like what we do in our services in the morning?
Do you like the music?
Yeah, the music's pretty fun.
The toys?
The snacks.
The snacks? Yeah, you're eating mine.
So what do you think that the ladies at our church are really good at?
Being kind.
Do you think there's any jobs that happen on Sundays that you see mostly the ladies do?
Some of them make the treat and serve the treat.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only jobs I really see.
So they always smile to you and they offer like more for you? Have you noticed that? No? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you see any of the ladies on stage ever? What do you see them do on stage?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't see them on stage? What was Jen doing this morning?
When they sing.
He was singing.
Mm-hmm.
I also see Mennonite singing too.
Yeah, you do. And is there any jobs that happen on Sundays that maybe you want to do one day?
They were like singing.
I I like to sing.
Is there anything else you want to do? No, that's all.
No, not serving the treats or something like that? No, that's too much work.
What about greeter? You usually like greeting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there's anything that girls are better than boys at in our church?
I think everyone's good at everything.
That's very nice. What do you think is a Mennonite woman?
Is it like someone that women that do work?
Work for what? Yes.
Work for the church.
Uh-huh.
And now that we heard from Elisa, we are going to hear from her mother, Soraya, who she did not grow up Mennonite either. She is a Latina woman who married a very nice fellow who's also didn't grow up Mennonite. They moved to Canada and joined in the Mennonite circles, and we're going to hear their story and whether or not she considers herself a Mennonite woman now that she attends a Mennonite church.
So, Soraya, you are one of the members of our church. I wanted to ask you, do you consider yourself a Mennonite woman?
I do. I do. I even remember the first time that I realized that I am a Mennonite. Yeah. I was on a trip for work because I used to work for MCBC, and when I was at the airport, they asked me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going for this meeting." And the person asked me, like with a face like, "Are you a Mennonite?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." But after that, I kept thinking, and up to now, like, I don't know, it has been like 8-9 years later, I still remember that moment when I said, "Yes, I am." I thought that I was just like a Christian. It's not just, but I was a Christian, and no, I am a Mennonite. Yes, I do. I consider myself a Mennonite woman. I guess it's a long story because it's not just like me, it was my husband's family. They came to this country, they went to a Baptist church at the beginning, and then they started coming to a Spanish Mennonite church. And they felt the connection with the community, the opportunity to serve, because that's what they wanted. And when I married my husband, he was already a Mennonite, and then I was a Catholic. And then I came to this church. I went to other church, like he was very open and flexible. And I felt something different here when I came here. And that's when I decided to start. It was at the beginning with the Spanish Mennonite church. I really liked that. Everything was about the Bible. And for me, that was important. But also sort of in caring for others. And then when I learned all of the projects around the world and the service that is done in the community, I said, of course I want to be here. I want to be here because I want to feel what they feel when they give. I want to give my time as well. And it was like that from the Spanish Mennonite church. Well, I was also learning English. Well, I was also observing what I would say like the mother church was doing. And that's how I started. Maybe I didn't experience much before because I was not that committed. So that would be my fault. But I don't know, I felt attracted probably because I saw living the gospel by doing what it says, doing good, loving your neighbor. And I'm sure the other congregations were doing it, but I didn't feel probably the connection, or I didn't see where and how I could serve. And probably being in a small community allowed me to serve as well. So that was something that I was not expecting that I could use. I didn't even know what was the meaning of my gift at the time, to use my gift to help others. So for me, that was something different, that they could see me and I could do something for others as well. I'm sure I would have been able to do it somewhere else. But something that I really like about this church is that everyone is humble. And if you go to other churches, there's something else there. but being humble, living in a way that is not just about showing, showing off what you have, but giving from what you have. That was, in my opinion, different, and I wanted to be like that. I feel that I belong. And from the first weeks that I used to come here, because I started volunteering, that's what I noticed. They were needing something. I knew that the church was in some kind of need, and I offered, like, how can I help? And they allowed me to help, and I felt grateful because of that. I used to go to 2 services a day, the Spanish and the English service. And I always remember some couples, they organize like a kind of dinner, and they welcome us, and they say, you're doing so much for us, we want to get to know you. And for me, that was special, because at some point I felt like I'm just coming here to help. That was my idea, but no, they helped me so much, and this church has helped me so much throughout those years. And I never felt like I am different. Like, they never made me feel like that. They made me feel part of the community, part of like the group that is working towards one purpose here. But I like enjoying from what they do. So of course I enjoy. They bake amazing. Like, the food is really good. The way they take care of each other, the way they serve is never like, I don't see complaining, for example. I have never seen that. I feel that I am just all the time learning from them, getting so much from them, but I don't feel excluded. I feel that I belong. And of course, I will see the color. I will see that, but when it's about love, you don't see that. And I don't feel that they see something different in me, nor me on them. How would you define a Mennonite woman? Someone who works. I feel that they work for others more than for themselves. Maybe it's like in their hearts all the time. Someone that gives all the time, and I have observed that they're always putting aside time for that, and sharing what they have. You know, maybe you don't need this, but when I was about to marry my husband, I had someone back home. Of course, you don't know what is a Mennonite. Yeah. Someone told me, be careful. Be careful, because if he is a Mennonite, the way that they think, the way that they handle like a family, it's different. And I was a little bit scared of that. But I haven't seen that in my husband. I haven't seen that in other men in the church. What I see is like couples that are an example for others. Women that they're raising their children with love, care, like showing them how to take care of a family, but also about the world and the communities. And care for this church, and care for the gospel, and every project that the church and the community, like the MCVC or NCC, have. So I really like that.
So you already heard from Karissa Durant in a previous episode, but we interviewed her and got to talk with her. She's a pastor in the Mennonite church in Winnipeg. And so she's a dear friend, and we got to ask her about her recent marriage and choice to not change her name, and what her experience being a non-cultural Mennonite in a Mennonite context is, and how she's embraced Anabaptism.
So I'm Karissa Durant. Definitely not a Mennonite last name. It's French Canadian, I think. And originally from just outside of Calgary, Alberta. I would say Alberta has the least amount of Mennonites that I know of provincially, in the western provinces at least. And I didn't know what Mennonites were until I moved to Winnipeg in 2011. 2011 I moved to Winnipeg. And when I first moved here, I had people telling me, oh, you're going to see Mennonites everywhere. And I was like, really? Like, so I was thinking, like, urban Hutterites. So I was expecting to show up in Winnipeg and there would be people dressed like Hutterites everywhere. And so I got here and I didn't see anyone. And then I was in my first class at U of W and I was sitting next to somebody and she asked me my name and I told her and she goes, "Oh, you're not Mennonite." And I was like, well, obviously, like in my head, I'm not dressed like a Hutterite. So, and I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, "Oh, your last name. It's not Mennonite." And that was like my first introduction to Mennonites, was this idea that there were last names and names that I had been familiar with in Alberta, that were associated with this, like what I thought was just a culture at first, then to realize that it was a whole faith. So I think from there, like living in Winnipeg, it's its own little weird microcosm of Mennonites. Like I know people from BC, I know people from Saskatchewan, I know people from like Ontario, and the way that Mennonite communities there talk about being Mennonite is so different than in southern Manitoba. And so yeah, here is like a real hot spot, and being Mennonite is like a big deal. And I remember my first year in university, I was part of a Bible study, all of which were Mennonites. And they decided to introduce me to what being a Mennonite was by having me over for a meal. And all I could see were white and brown food in front of me. And I learned all the Low German words for it. Another interaction I had was I went over to a friend's house and her grandmother was there and introduced me. And her grandmother speaks Low German and goes, "Oh, you're not Plautdietsch," and walks away. And I was like, what just happened in this interaction? And my friend's like, "Oh, she's disappointed you're not Mennonite." I was like, this is so weird. I just had no idea that this ecosystem existed in the world. And never did I think I would then become a part of it. So, yeah. So now I'm a pastor at a Mennonite church. I am doing my graduate degree at a Mennonite university. I'm writing a thesis about Mennonite Brethren, biblical interpretation. Like I am fully immersed, yet I would say I'm not Mennonite. So I would identify as Anabaptist, like that's where I go theologically. So thinking back to the Radical Reformation. And I think it's actually quite ironic that Mennonite has become so closely associated with like a specific ethnicity that you're born into, especially in Canada, I would say. And you're looking predominantly at people with like European descent, and special last names. But ironically, early Anabaptism would say you weren't born into the church. You actually have to choose to be Mennonite, or you have to choose to be Anabaptist, and it's a choosing into this thing. And it just so happens that these last names are a group of people that originally chose into this, that we've now made it into this thing that is a culture. I'm really drawn to Anabaptism in general just because of the emphasis on community, emphasis on reconciliation and nonviolence. I really appreciate the emphasis on like daily discipleship. Like your faith is a lived faith. It's not a private, personal thing. I also really like that it's adult baptism. I feel squirmy about baptizing infants and forcing baptism on people with the church history. So those are things that because I didn't grow up in the church, that's another aspect of this. So I was part of Evangelical Covenant Church, and then I was part of Anglican Mission for a while, and then I was part of a Baptist church, and now I'm I was with the Mennonite Brethrens, and now I'm with the Mennonite Church of Canada. So yeah, I would say I feel like I finally found a theological home.
So why didn't you change your last name? What's the story?
Oh, it's so wrapped up in all these politics, actually. So I remember asking Nicholas, my husband, he's a Wilms from Ontario, and also has Giesbrecht on his mother's side. So I remember asking him if he cared. Like, do you care if we have the same last name or not? And he goes, no. He's like, it would matter more if we were planning to have kids. And I was like, totally. So like, if kids were ever on the table, we could revisit that conversation. I don't need to change my name now forever, but if we were to have like more people in our family, then maybe it would make sense. It would make things a bit easier, like traveling and all that kind of stuff. So for us, it wasn't like I was like, I'm Karissa and I'm Karissa Durant, and this is who I've been and will continue to be, and also have some things published under my maiden name. And so it's like, yeah, and Nicholas was like, and I don't own you. And I was like, yeah, let's think about all the ways that this is coming from kind of history and rituals around ownership. So think about that. But for me, the more I thought about it and talked about it a lot in therapy, I kind of like having myself be a Mennonite without the last name, because the Mennonite game for me is like so tough. Like I hate that game. And people will ask my name and they won't play it with me. I can play the Mennonite game. I went to CMU. I've been in the Mennonite church. Tell me who you know. I live in Winnipeg. There's like 3 degrees of separation from everybody. But you hear my last name and people immediately go, oh, well, you're not going to be related to me. And it's true, but it's also like, yeah, it's awkward. So, and there's part of me that was like, yeah, I want to be Anabaptist without playing this weird culture game. And I'm okay. Like, yeah. So there's a little bit of like angsty pride in it for me, but I think it does the work for me to start conversations.
So we're going to hear a story from Jean, and so it's about her story immigrating to Canada from Korea and her experience, and she now goes to a Mennonite church and calls herself a Mennonite, and we think it's important to hear a bit of her immigration story.
First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the brothers and sisters at Peace Church who have welcomed and cared for us so warmly. I give thanks and praise to God who led my daughter and me to this church. Through this letter, I would like to briefly share my family's story. My father was 5 years old during the Korean War. My mother was born in the year the war ended. At that time, Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world, and the streets were filled with people starving to death. My mother's great-grandfather, the police chief, had risen in status under the Japanese system. My father's grandfather, however, was a member of North Korean Communist Party. When North Korea invaded and took control, the first thing they did was execute those who had worked for Japan. My mother's great-grandfather was shot and killed in Manchuria by a group of communist soldiers, one of whom was my father's grandfather. Many years later, my parents met, fell in love, and married. It was a true Korean Romeo and Juliet, two families that had once been enemies. My mother became pregnant at 19 and married young, which was common at that time. She was a devoted Christian, while my father enjoyed drinking, gambling, and women. He disliked my mother going to church, perhaps because it reminded him more strongly of his own sinfulness. Fathers of that generation did not know how to show affection or care for their families. Life was harsh, and when frustrated, many drank and took out their anger on their families. When I was young, my siblings and I suffered a lot from my father's violence. I was afraid of him. My sister was once in a serious car accident, and my brother frequently got into trouble. I was the youngest, so my family was extremely protective of me. I was never allowed freedom. My father constantly told me that the world was too dangerous and that he had to protect me fiercely. I could not have a boyfriend, and I had to be home by 8 p.m. I studied hard in high school and entered a good university, but in college, I realized how far behind I was compared to other students and how much competitiveness I lacked. I longed to pursue my dreams and succeed. I decided to try studying abroad, which had been my dream since childhood, but two major obstacles stood in my way: finances and the fact that my father would never allow me to leave. I wrote to him a long, heartfelt letter. After reading it, my father didn't speak to me for 6 months. He treated me as though I didn't exist. I cried every day, feeling ignored and rejected. As a university student living in a dorm and returning home only on weekends, I felt his silence even more painfully. 6 months later, I gave my father the letter. He finally spoke to me. He said, "My beloved youngest daughter, I couldn't sleep a single night after reading your letter. I want to support your dream, but because I've never experienced studying abroad, everything feels uncertain and frightening. So I called every friend I know who sent their children abroad. All of them advised against it. They said it's too dangerous. One friend's daughter returned with a mental illness. Another friend's son had a terrible accident overseas. At that time, the news constantly reported on the LA riot in Koreatown. After 5 minutes of silence, he continued, "Even though everyone else is telling me not to let you go, I believe that the God you believe in will protect you. Wherever you go, you will do well. I believe in my daughter, and I believe in the God my daughter believes in." I couldn't say anything. I just cried. He then said, "My friend and his wife run a supermarket in New York. You can live with them, eat there, and study safely. I've already talked to them." I was 20 years old, a university sophomore. I spent 2 years in the United States studying English and working as a cashier at their supermarket. I experienced many things during that time. Stories more dramatic than a movie, which I will share another time. When I returned to Korea, I fully prepared for overseas studies once again. I was accepted to a university in the United Kingdom and completed my degree in business administration. In my 20s, I also received missionary training with YM in Hawaii and served for 3 months in South Africa. I was doing well financially and passionately pursuing success, just like my father. Then we received the news that my father had lung cancer. Our family united to care for him. After exactly 1 year and 6 months, my father went home to be with the Lord. While in the hospital, he accepted Christ, was baptized, and studied the Bible, becoming a new believer before passing. To summarize, I encountered Jesus deeply when I was 11 years old. Whenever I felt hurt or trouble, I ran to church to pray and receive wisdom and strength from the Lord. My husband and I decided to come to Canada for our daughter Jewish education. English is extremely important, but even more importantly, as a Christian mother, I want to build a strong foundation of faith in her life and teach her the Word of God.
Our next interview is with someone we both love deeply and dearly. She is our cousin. Her name is Tegan, and she is part of the LGBTQ community. We thought it was really important to make sure we shared on this perspective as well.
Because it's like a modern, if we're looking at a modern Mennonite experience, it is a lot of people's experience as a modern Mennonite. And
though it might not have been talked about in history way back when, it is very much a subject now, and
would have still been some people's experience. It just would have not.
And our character definitely would have interacted with people who were part of the community, whether she knew it or not. And definitely, as an old woman in her old age, she'd be hearing about it and would have some kind of opinion on it. So we wanted to explore this and hear from someone who is a Mennonite and is a lesbian, from her own words.
Yeah.
I'm Tegan Froese. You guys are my cousins. I don't know. What else do I say about myself? I'm a lesbian. That's relevant to the conversation. I feel like womanhood was tied to being a mother and being a wife. And then being like a homemaker, being good at those things. Yeah, that's just always what I imagined for my life. I had no question. I was just like, I am going to get married. I'm going to be fruitful and multiply. And I'm going to be a housewife. And I guess that like also the church we went to was technically Mennonite Brethren, but I also didn't really see the church in that way. Yeah, so no, I really didn't have that much of an understanding of it until I was like fully an adult and already out and all of those things. And it's actually through the General Conference Mennonite that I've been like meeting queer people who are also grew up Mennonite, but they have way more of this like knowledge about it and like that I did not have. I research now, but they seem to grow up having a very understanding of where Mennonites came from and a lot of the like peace aspects about it. That's what I liked about it when I researched it. Pacifism and stuff like that. It didn't even occur to me that I could be gay or be a lesbian until way into me researching it and thinking about it when I was like 22. Tied to what I said about, I feel like womanhood to me it surrounded men. But then also we have the piece of like purity culture that I'm also being told that I shouldn't be a sexual being. So I have this combo of like, I'm being told all I should care about is men, but I'm also being told I'm not a sexual being. So it's not weird to me that I'm like wanting men, but not wanting them in a sexual way. And so I started just like giving myself permission to like anything and do anything. I had to practice like even swearing. I had to practice swearing in my head before I could swear out loud. So I also had to practice like thinking about women in my head before I could even say it out loud or act on it really to anybody. Maybe even especially because I'm a very femme lesbian. All those other female things didn't feel foreign to me, didn't feel wrong.
So you recently have been getting more connected into a Mennonite church again. How have you found that process? How have you found connecting back into that? What have you learned differently about being a Mennonite woman now?
It's been so different. Like shockingly different is what I would say. Because it kind of feels like, it seems like it's the same thing, right? If you described like what church is, it's the exact same thing. But the attitude is just so different. I don't know, like I had like a 65-year-old woman be like, oh, and what are your pronouns? And I almost cried. Like I just felt I'm in a church like coffee thing and this random woman is like, I can't assume your pronouns. But not just that, like it feels like the focus is very like a community outward focus, like focused on social justice and focused on, right, like who needs help in our world, who needs help in our community. Even I went to a Christmas banquet and they had a whole extra table that was just, this was a ticketed Christmas banquet, but they had a whole extra table that was just if in case somebody walked off on the street and they could sit at that table and get food. I just joined the fellowship committee, which is basically like hospitality, right? Like doing like coffees and like helping out with potluck, stuff like that. And it's mostly women, but there were a couple men on the committee, and I was honestly impressed that there were any men on the fellowship committee. I think there is still a lot of like traditionally feminine things that I would say are a Mennonite woman to me, but not to say that those things are bad. I actually think like things like hospitality, and I think hospitality is underrated in a huge way. I think it's a huge deal. I think so much of life is about gathering people together, and that is such an underlooked, like the amount of effort and things that can go into making a gathering good is a lot and is overlooked a lot because there's like so many different aspects. You have the food, you have like knowing how to make people feel comfortable in a space, knowing how to make people feel welcome, knowing how to make things like accessible and understandable. Yeah, I actually like weirdly have a few friends now who are Mennonite and in the queer community with me. And so I was sitting there trying to be like, do we have like traits? That's what I was trying to think. And I think kind of welcoming is sort of the trait that I would say. Even like, you know, like talking to different people in an event, asking people more about themselves. Like that's why I feel like welcoming, hospitality, I don't know if these are the right words, but that kind of idea is what I would say I feel like we would have in common. Because I would say that's what we love. We love church, me and Jana, my sister. And obviously I had some hurt from the church after I discovered that I was a lesbian and that this had been so pushed down in my life because of the church. But still, there's so many good things about it. And a lot of those things are the community aspect. But then there's also like the intergenerational relationships, I think is really hard to do. And then a place to have serious conversation. I think that's a huge thing about church that people overlook, that like a party, sure, you can have a serious conversation, but that's not the point of the party. Versus like at church, you know, we're going here and we're going to talk about serious things. So I guess intentionality that church has. And so me and my sister have started these community nights, we call them, or once a month. We have kind of a dinner party that usually has an activity after of some sorts. And our idea is to foster community in a way that maybe is uncomfortable for people sometimes. Like at our dinner party, I make everybody do their highs and lows of their week. Obviously, you can just pass if you really want to, but I think people need to be seen more and need to be heard more. And people are afraid to be heard. And so it's just a good way to get people talking about themselves. And I feel like I learn things about people that I've known forever that are like different because I'm asking about these like small things in their week versus like their big life things. Open our house to people all the time. I'm always ready to host, always ready to have people over, always happy when people are over.
So through all of these stories, the question that has driven us is, as we're writing one story about a Mennonite woman, we're like, what is a Mennonite woman? And we've put that in, sprinkled in through, and in our very first episode you heard us hear lots of different perspectives. So now we're gonna answer it ourselves. So what do you think a Mennonite woman is?
It's so hard because there is anywhere from your stereotypical answer of the little old lady in the kitchen with the buns and knitting things to send off to MCC overseas. And then you could go all the way to a trans woman who attends a Mennonite church and calls herself a Mennonite woman, and anywhere in between there. And so there's just like, there's so many definitions that can go along with both the word Mennonite and woman. So putting them together makes it even more complex and hard to grapple with. But something that I personally feel is really important is that if we water down the term Mennonite too much, it kind of loses its meaning. And originally, the first people who were Mennonites, they died for their beliefs of of Jesus's
non-resistance.
teachings, of non-resistance,
which is based off of Jesus's teachings that piece.
Yeah. And like this was something they literally were martyred for, and they went to the grave over. And this was so important to them that they were pushed out of communities. They had to run, they had to hide, they had to do all these things. So taking this very important belief and then just going, well, I'm Mennonite because I want to say I'm Mennonite. That's really hard to marry those things together, but is also maybe true, because also part of being a Mennonite is not being exclusive and is a welcoming thing. It's saying you get to be part of this community too if you want to believe these things.
So you're kind of saying that people didn't die because they like to bake buns and have people over for dinner and knit blankets and send them overseas. People died because they believed in Jesus.
Yeah. So if you want to be a Mennonite because of these fun cultural pieces, it's hard to say that is a good reason. I don't know. But it's also an inclusive group to a degree. So then there's this piece of, do we separate the religion from the culture? And do we say these old people who actually were the ones fleeing and actually were the ones dying for these reasons, do we just give them the name and we say, you guys are Mennonite, and maybe I have Mennonite heritage because my grandparents were Mennonite.
But it's like the idea of Anabaptism is that you are choosing to enter a faith tradition. It's like my parents didn't. The idea, if like you don't know what Anabaptism is it's like you were baptized as an adult. It's not. It's like another baptism rather than just you were baptized as a baby. Yeah. You chose it as an adult.
Yes.
And so to just be brought into the Mennonite
just because you were born there,
choosing it, does feel like it takes away the heart of Anabaptism, which is what Mennonites are. They are Anabaptists.
Yeah.
But then it washes away the culture, which I think is important too, because it is its own culture with its own languages and its own words and its own traditions and clothing. So if you just fully take that away also, it does lose that. It's really complicated.
Yeah, you can't really have one without the other, but at the same time you kind of have to have one without the other. And it's how do you really grapple with that? And then on top of that, being a woman, like what? How do these things go together?
Yeah.
And I don't have a good answer.
Maybe we have more questions than we have answers now at the end of this.
That could be. But our point wasn't really to solve this. Our point was that we wanted to
talk about it.
We wanted to give people voices and say a Mennonite woman has been silenced pretty much our entire existence, and now is a time where people are willing to listen, and so let's put some microphones in front of women's faces and hear their stories
and share them. And let them be heard. And
so that this well-behaved woman can actually have her story told.
Can make history.
She can make history. Where the title comes from.
That she can actually make history, because there is such deep, rich tradition of women who we don't know their stories, and
we probably never will, because they either don't think it's a good enough story to tell, or people don't want to sit and listen to it,
or they've passed on and they never got to share it, and they were too busy being good and doing all the things they were supposed to do.
But the reason that your potluck tastes so good and the reason that your blankets are so warm at nighttime and your services run as smoothly as they do.
We talked about, I remember who we talked about it with at this point.
Oh, yeah.
But we talked about thrift stores. The reason
the reason thrift stores exist basically
is Mennonites.
Is because of the Mennonites.
So
these women wanting to do good and
Yeah.
and be non-resistant while doing good for the world and helping out. And
so all you thrift girlies with your thrift hauls.
yeah, you can thank the Mennonite women in your life for that.
Yeah, for frugal living.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot of questions, but
Yeah.
I think what we're going forward with and taking is that women need to be heard.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stories to tell.
There are.
A lot of stories
Way
to
more.
tell.
And we didn't even like dip our toe into half the
I
things we
know.
wanted to.
As we've been interviewing people, we're just more and more like, oh,
Yeah.
we should talk about this, or we should find some to talk about this.
Yeah.
And there's like stories that we haven't been able to tell, and we wanted to find a trans Mennonite woman and ask her her story,
or
and
an Indigenous
experience.
Mennonite woman.
We wanted to find an Indigenous Mennonite woman. There were so
Yeah.
many people that were like, oh, like we want a representation of, or an Ethiopian
Yeah.
Mennonite woman. Like we're like, oh, there's stories.
Yeah.
And we're missing them.
Yeah.
And it's like when we don't have space to hear or find these stories to share them, it's a loss for everyone.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that I want to find more spaces to share stories and hear them.
Definitely.
So we're hoping that this musical gets that conversation going more.
At least starts there.
And hopefully you can see yourself in this musical.
Yeah, like that's the problem with this musical, and problem and gift, I guess, is that we're like trying to generalize a story that is so many different stories into one person's experience, and obviously this person can't experience every single thing that's ever happened to every woman. So
and we can't be all things. Like we have to just choose a story to tell and bring in pieces. But
so there's going to be things we miss.
Yeah, and we are sad about that, but that's also why we wanted to do a bit of these research episodes, was hopefully we can share a bit more of those stories that are still going to influence us in the writing, but maybe won't get part of the actual
final
performance.
Yeah.
So yeah. But we're excited. So by the time you hear this, we'll be done writing our musical.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
And it'll be coming out
well on its
very
way
soon.
to getting released. Yeah.
So if you're in the Vancouver area, you can come and watch it live. And if you're...
We'll share those details when we know them.
And if you're not, maybe you'll see it live one day when we go on tour.
Maybe we'll go on tour.
Or
talk to your local congregation and say, we want to bring these ladies in and do this thing.
Yeah. Or you can listen to the podcast and
that.
Yeah, we're excited to share it with you.
And we'll lull you to sleep. Good night. Because it's a podcast and they're listening. Never mind.
What?
Cut that.
Okay. Anyway, we're gonna say goodbye.
Yep.
And we'll see you.
We'll see you on the other side
when we are playing characters that are not ourselves.
Yep. When we are no longer us.
Peace out. A-Town from Robyn
and Katrina.
You're listening to
the Well-Behaved Woman Podcast Musical
Research Episodes.
Almost perfect.